President-elect Donald Trump has announced several more picks for his cabinet. His choice for Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, the longtime Wall Street executive, has recently surfaced as a key economic ally for Trump. He released a statement saying, quote, Scott is widely respected as one of the world's foremost international investors and geopolitical and economic strategists. Scott's story is that of the American dream. Trump had also announced Oregon Representative Lori Chavez-DeRemer as his pick for Labor Secretary. She lost her congressional reelection bid earlier this month. Chavez-DeRemer is a small business owner who had the backing of the Teamsters Union president for the job of Labor Secretary. Trump has also chosen Russell Vought as his choice to run the Office of Management and Budget. It's a position that he held during Trump's first term. And the president-elect making this announcement, his choice for U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Janette Nesheiwat. For more, let's go now to CBS News reporter Jake Rosen. Jake, the nominations, this election's coming fast and furious now. What can you tell us about these picks and how they compare perhaps to some of the other more controversial picks? It seems, especially in the case of Bessent, that he is well respected, and several of these others maybe have more of a CV that you would expect to see from a cabinet level position.
Right. And I think the one that really stands out in addition to Scott Bessent is Lori Chavez-DeRemer, who the union head of the Teamsters Union, one of the biggest unions in the country and the biggest in North America, said that they were supporting her and that was a great pick by the president-elect, and that she would work to preserve and expand union jobs in America and protect unions. And now that coming into maybe this election cycle, unions affiliating themselves with Donald Trump maybe wasn't on your bingo card, but it's something that Donald Trump in his campaign over the last 2 years really made a big point of.
And that's
about a year ago.
Oh, sorry, Jake, that's a huge endorsement for DeRemer to have, but she was a one-time congresswoman from Oregon. She's a small business owner and doesn't have a lot of other experience necessarily. How was she able to secure that endorsement from the head of labor?
Well, we know that she met with Donald Trump yesterday, according to our CBS News reporting. That interview must have gone well because, again, a quick turnaround time. But I think you have to remember that Donald Trump has really been pushing in virtue signals really a lot on the campaign trail in terms of his economic policies, but also just hoping to get, you'll remember Sean O'Brien, that union head, went on the stage at the Republican National Convention and spoke about republicanism and unions and how they need to move forward and work together. It's something that Kamala Harris in her campaign faced an issue of, is losing basically anyone but executives for union support. The Trump campaign touted internal endorsements from a lot of these unions. So again, just to get that support from a union group this fast, right after this big slate of announcements, is certainly something big. Now, I'll touch on Russ Vought for a second. He wrote a chapter in the Project 2025 book, that very controversial book that Democrats really made a big point of attacking down the stretch. He is someone who believes that executive power in the U.S. government should be expanded, and that Donald Trump does not need a judiciary or a legislative branch to do a lot of the things that Donald Trump wants to do. Some of that is clawing back unspent money. Some of it is expanding presidential military power, things like that. Putting him in a position like the Office of Management and Budget is certainly a way to get things done in kind of along the lines of a Project 2025 playbook, which is expanding executive authority and giving Donald Trump the right to do what he wants in terms of reforming the government.
And we're also seeing Dr. Janette Nesheiwat is official in this statement from the president-elect. He calls her a fierce advocate and strong communicator for preventative medicine and public health. Among some of her life experiences, he says that during the COVID-19 pandemic, she worked on the front lines in New York City, treating thousands of Americans, and helped patients in the aftermath of President Donald Trump's historic Operation Warp Speed, crediting her and others with saving hundreds of millions of lives. Again, we're seeing another person who is board certified in medicine, being tasked with Surgeon General, the top doctor for the United States. When we're looking at the nominations that we're seeing now versus the nominations that we saw before that were perhaps more controversial, what sticks out to you, Jake?
Well, I think you kind of have to pair what Robert F. Kennedy, the head of HHS, which oversees a huge budget. It's about 25% of the entire federal budget that Mr. Kennedy would oversee if he gets confirmed. And the statements he's made on vaccine skepticism with what you just read there, Lana, which is really this woman was a big part of saving lives in New York City, which was the epicenter for so many months of what was going on with COVID, but also noting explicitly in that statement, Operation Warp Speed, which was the U.S. movement led by Donald Trump while he was still in office to get vaccines in American arms, COVID vaccines in American arms. Those things might not coexist, at least on the surface right now. We'll see how this plays out over the next couple of days and weeks. But Robert F. Kennedy has been critical of the COVID vaccine, saying that it didn't work, saying that it hurt Americans. We have Dr. Oz, who's in the mix to oversee Medicaid and Medicare. That's another aspect of the kind of this doctor apparatus that Donald Trump has tried to assemble. And yes, while he says she's going to make America healthy again, how you pair that, a legitimate doctor who's done legitimate work, especially in the 2020 COVID pandemic, with what Kennedy wants to do is yet to be seen, and we'll have to do some investigating and reporting on that too.
Very interesting. And like Dr. Mehmet Oz, Dr. Janette Nesheiwat also knows her television audience as well. As our viewers undoubtedly saw from the photo that we have of her, she was a Fox News contributor. She currently is, but obviously when she takes that spot, that'll become something that's past tense. All right, Jake Rosen, thank you so much. CBS News contributor Javier David joins us now on the phone. He is also the managing editor of business and markets at Axios. So, Javier, I'm interested in the financial world's take on Scott Bessent for Treasury Secretary.
Yeah. Hi, Lana, and good evening to you. So this is actually a really good pick. A lot of the names that have been floated by President Trump, Kevin Warsh, Howard Lutnick, are people that are serious economics markets folks. Basically, this is what the market wants to see, and I would be, cautious to think that when stock futures begin trading on Sunday and carrying over into Monday, it's going to be worth a few hundred points on the Dow and the S&P and all of the major indices because, at a minimum, he's not nominating Marjorie Taylor Greene to Treasury, which, given the president-elect's priority or prioritizing of loyalty, at a minimum, this is a serious candidate. He's a serious pick. And I think that investors will greet this news with at least some enthusiasm.
And we've already seen that the value of the dollar compared to other currencies has risen since President-elect Trump has won the presidency. I want to ask you a bit more about this question of tariffs on imported goods, because the promise out on the campaign trail was 20%. And as you well know, a lot of times economists will all tell you that tariffs are paid ultimately by the consumer, especially when we're talking about things that are imported from China. Those businesses are not going to take on the extra costs. All of us here in the U.S. who are paying for those goods, we're going to be taking on those extra costs. That can be good for the U.S. economy because it can be more manufacturing here in the U.S. But talk to us about what Bessent's position is on tariffs and how that might ultimately affect how the economy performs.
Right. So, look, the question of tariffs is a real one. It is a serious one, and it is one that economists are debating. You are absolutely correct in saying that companies are going to be deeply reluctant, if not, refuse altogether, absorbing the cost of taking on extra tariffs, whatever they might be. So Bessent is on record as having said that he sort of, is an advocate for Trump's policies. He likes deregulation. He likes tax cuts, as one might expect. And he's also very interested in curbing the debt burden. But he's not, I don't see anything, at least not right now, on his position on tariffs. But the fact that he's, again, a serious thinker, he's got heft in markets, you would think that, yes, on one hand, he's a loyalist, but on the other, he'd be more probably prone to tell the president, let's not do this right now, or let's not do this in an extreme way because it is inflationary. And I think that all of the serious economic thinkers know for a fact that if these tariffs are implemented, it would be inflationary. It would add to the problem, which basically helped sweep the president-elect back into office in the first place.
Javier, I'm so glad that you brought up inflation, because that has been one of those major issues that you and I have talked ad nauseum about, both on and off camera. How do you take Bessent in his ability to help fight inflation?
Well, I think it's encouraging that he is, again, on record as having said something about the debt burden. That puts upward pressure that basically that the government is spending so much money with no end in sight. The government runs, endless amounts of fiscal red ink. And they, of course, issue bonds in order to cover that spending. The fact that he is, again, on record as having said that he's interested in addressing the debt burden, that is one of the best ways that we can help contain inflation, pushing up or lowering interest rates, helping to curb the, upward pressure that goes up on the interest rates. That helps us in terms of, consumers' credit cards, auto loans, mortgage rates. That's the single biggest way to kind of help alleviate the pressure or, sort of adjust the valve or release some of that pressure that consumers have been feeling. And that's a really important part of the equation.
Javier David, so glad to have you, especially offering that perspective on how the markets and how the rest of the economy may be affected by the president-elect's pick, Scott Bessent, as Treasury Secretary. Thanks, Javier.
Thank you.